how to release stored emotions without going into the past or getting overwhelmed or pushing it down. So, hey, my name's Rochelle and I'm a complex trauma therapist, and I'm going to talk today about how to release emotional responses without going back into all the details of the things that happened in the past, shoving them down, or just feeling stuck. My name's Rochelle. I'm a complex trauma therapist. I have a group program for women to take them from overwhelmed to calm and confident in their emotion. And this comes up a lot. So the first thing I want to talk about is the way emotions are stored. So emotions are stored as sensation. And oftentimes if someone says, old things come back and I feel overwhelmed and I do some things to calm and breathe and, get centered again because it feels overwhelming. I don't want to keep going back into the past. Sometimes what they're actually doing is pushing it down and subconsciously and holding that stress and that emotion. And the reason it's important to really work on emotional release is because if we are storing emotional stress, what's happening is our body is holding that. And then later we have migraines, we have pain syndromes, we have gut disturbances, we get high blood pressure, high cholesterol, all the things. And so being able to release emotions from things that have happened in the past is super uber important in being able to have good emotional regulation, good nervous system health, and good physical health. So when we think about emotion, the first thing we want to think about is that if it's tied to a past event, meaning that past event, when we think about it, it doesn't feel like we're remembering it, but we actually start feeling the distress of it. We actually start going into thinking, I should have done this, I should have done that, or I can't believe this happened, or, projecting things into the future, or we just feel a really uncomfortable sensation, like we just can't stand to think about that thing. It makes us, we want to avoid, we find ourselves eating or scrolling or shopping or getting busy or performing to avoid it. If there's ever anything from the past that carries that kind of emotional charge, that means it's not been processed. And when I say not been processed, what that means is that the brain hasn't worked through the memory in where it's been time-stamped, and the brain knows that it's over. So you go into the memory or the emotional experience of something, and your brain thinks it's happening all over again. Not that I'm remembering it, but I'm actually reliving it. And so the reason that, again, sometimes, when we were going through the original event, our brain had to push it down. We had to hold it. We had to fight, flight, freeze. We had to get out of, we had to adapt to that situation. And so we weren't able to really move through the emotions of it. So when people then have experiences that are coming back and they think, why are these emotions so big? This happened, 5, 10, 20, 30 years ago. Why are the emotions so big around this? The reason that they're so big is because, again, your brain is back into that original network of what's happening. And so it's very important that we be able to release emotions by changing our response. And as we change the response, our brain can process the memory and have a new reaction to it. So the first thing that we're going to want to do is really be able to feel into the physical sensation. Where do we feel that emotion in our bodies? Is it a pit in our stomach? Are our hands tingly? Do we have a pain in a certain part of our body? Do we notice that our throat is tight? Where do we notice that emotion in the body? And that's where the capacity to breathe and develop awareness. Now, I'm not talking about doing deep breathing to try to get rid of it. What I'm talking about is taking a moment to really feel into the body and recognize where that sensation is, to locate that sensation in the body. Emotion is stored as sensation in the body. So the first thing you're going to want to do is notice, where am I experiencing that emotion? What does that emotion feel like in my body? This is something that sounds easy to do. It's not easy for everyone. A lot of times the way we've gotten through hard things is to not feel it. And so feeling it, recognizing the sensation in their body might be a new thing for you. And if that is, you should know that it's something that as we do it more and more, you're going to get more comfortable with it. Your brain's actually going to get better at tuning to and detecting the sensations that we have within our body. So the next thing that we're going to want to do is be present with that sensation. What happens is the sensation feels uncomfortable, and so our mind takes over the meaning. This is where we can get stuck, and this is where sometimes the more therapy we have around something doesn't necessarily break us free from it, because we go into the story of it. We start talking about the details. We start looking at it. I should have done this. I should have done that. Other people did this to me. They did that to me. I'm not saying it's not important to ever have insights and to revisit something. But when we start going into the story, again, it's really important that we be present, meaning that we are not getting lost in the past story, but it's like, I am here now. And rather than me going back into the past with the memory or with the emotion, I am here and I'm recognizing current emotional responses that are old, that came from that memory. So I am here, I am having this sensation. There's anger, there might be sadness, there might be disappointment, there might be rejection, there might be betrayal, and I'm experiencing this emotion. And I'm experiencing this, right? This burning in my stomach is this weight on my chest is this, and allow ourselves to experience the emotion. That might be crying, that might be saying something audibly, that might be noticing that impulse in our, hands or our body. Now, when I explain this, I want to say that first of all, it's important to have body safety before we move into this. So if we don't have that, if we can't breathe, if we don't have capacity, if we can't experience any safety in our body, these emotional responses can feel too big. It can feel like a tsunami. But it's very important that we work toward building capacity to be with the emotion. We know that God is a very compassionate God. He's close to the brokenhearted. He created us to have big feelings, big expressions. Sometimes those just weren't allowed or weren't able to be processed at the time. So if they come up, you might think, what, this is such an intense emotion for something that's happened in the past. And that may be the case. But if we can allow ourselves to realize that we are releasing old stuff, we're releasing old things. That means I am here in the here and now. I'm releasing something that feels big because it's attached to the past and it didn't get expressed at the time, and simply have compassion for that. I'm a big believer that it's important to have an empathic witness to our pain at some point. Like at some point, it is helpful to be able to share with someone emotions that we had about something that was big for us. But at the end of the day, we all need to be the first responder to our own emotions, meaning regardless of how many times we've told the story or how many times someone has given us compassion or told us, that it wasn't our fault or that we should have been supported, if we cannot attend to our own emotions with compassion, we are always going to be prone to overwhelm. We are going to be prone to looking outside for something that can truly only be done inside. So having a compassionate response. So first we are noticing and having capacity to really move through that emotion, and we are having compassion for that emotion. We are learning to be with the emotion because it will relax. It's kind of like if we have a muscle, I remember if I would get, muscle tension back here, one of the things that I could do is really hold the tension in that muscle, tighten that muscle, strengthening that mind body awareness and tense that muscle and then release. And so if we get a cramp, a Charlie horse, that's not going to last forever. But as we move through that, then it releases. Well, we can think about emotions in that same way. We're going to feel through them. There's going to be a beginning, a middle, and end. There might be a crescendo that feels really big, but we will not stay stuck in that. And once we lose the fear that we will stay stuck in that and we give ourselves permission to just move through emotions, to get through the sensation, it relaxes the body. As we move through those emotional responses, we're actually helping our nervous system to reset. If we interrupt that by using our toolkit and just, breathing or pushing it down or going into avoidance or performance or whatever we've done in the past to not experience the emotion, we stay stuck. So it's very important that we get through emotion, beginning, middle, and end, by feeling it first in the sensation, being with it, resisting the temptation to go into the words, go into the story, the rationalization, the justification, all the details. Don't do that. It's really not going to help you get unstuck. And then be able to, offer compassion, feel the compassion of the Lord, be a compassionate caregiver to the emotions, and allow it to relax. That will take the charge out of emotions that come back. Now, of course, if there is something like, true PTSD symptoms, these things are still very beneficial. But again, sometimes someone might not have the capacity for feeling safe. And so feeling into emotions, they might find that it is just too much. And if that's the case, then doing a lot of things to actually build just safety in the body, safety with experiences, that's going to be what we want to do. And, in the way that I work with people, we do a lot of foundational things around feeling safe, feeling into the body, regulating the nervous system so that when emotions come up, they have a steady baseline and they have increased capacity for moving through emotions. Then they can move through emotions, even if they're big, even if they're tied to past events that were really hard and in many cases traumatic, and they can do that without being stabilized. So I hope that was helpful. Go ahead and click the like and subscribe button if you're interested in more videos, more information about this kind of stuff. I have a 90-day program for women. The link will be below so you can listen to my masterclass to understand more about the brain, the body, and how we can break free from burnout and overwhelm and move forward with emotional confidence and greater clarity. And it really is the domino that kind of makes everything else in life work better. So I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.